At the will reading, my brother got the entire estate.
Me?
Nothing. You were adopted, my parents said. 2 hours later, my husband arrived. And everyone went dead silent. My name is Camille Rosalind Hart, and until this very moment, I truly believed blood didn't define love. I was wrong. The lawyer's voice sliced through the room like a blade, each syllable weighing more than the marble floors beneath our feet. Per Mr. and Mrs. Hart's final estate arrangement, the entire Rosalind family inheritance, including the Hamptons estate, 3 trust funds, and all residual assets, will go to their biological son, Andrew Rosalind Hart. I didn't breathe. Silence ballooned in the room. My brother sat back, folded his hands smugly, and tilted his head just enough to see me without moving his neck. I could see it all in his eyes, the smug triumph, the sick delight. And then came my father's voice. Cold. Measured. Surgical. You'll understand, Camille. You're not ours. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I blinked. My head tilted slightly, like the words didn't process. I'm sorry, what? You were adopted, my mother added, not a trace of grief or tenderness. We always meant to tell you eventually. But with Andrew taking over now, it's best we're clear. Clear? The lawyer didn't even flinch. He must have known. They all must have known. I looked around the long mahogany table at the people I had called family for 29 years. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I just stared at my mother's perfect pearl necklace, then at my father's stiff blazer, and finally landed on Andrew's Rolex-covered wrist as he reached for a celebratory glass of champagne. He raised it slightly toward me. To family, he said. The guests, neighbors, business associates, friends of the family, laughed and clapped like they were watching a scene from a movie they'd already seen and approved of. I stood. Nobody followed. Not even my mother. As I walked past her, she whispered, "It's not personal, Camille. We gave you a good life." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just walked out of that perfectly manicured home, through the hedged walkway, and got into my car, a second-hand Lexus I bought with my own money. 2 hours later, I was back. Not because I wanted to be, because I had to be. I should tell you, I hadn't come to the will reading alone. My husband, Trent Maddox, hadn't been able to make it earlier. Urgent call, he'd said. He was always running some high-stakes deal or discreet investment move. That morning, I hadn't told him much. Just, it's the reading. Wish me luck. He replied, I'll be there soon. Don't make any decisions until I get there. When I returned, they were still celebrating. Andrew was already talking about remodeling the estate and adding a helipad. My father was on the phone with a former senator. My mother was entertaining some guest who kept looking at her like she was royalty. And then, the front doors opened. Every head turned. There he was. Trent, my husband of 4 years, dressed in a charcoal suit, tailored so precisely it made the room feel cheap. No tie, just his signature dark shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and a Rolex you didn't buy, you earned. Behind him, 2 black SUVs were parked silently at the curb. Andrew's face dropped first. Then my mother's hand trembled slightly on her champagne glass. My father stood up, straight. Trent didn't speak right away. He just looked at me, and his eyes narrowed at the red rims around mine. Then his jaw tightened, a slow, dangerous shift that made my brother visibly gulp. Camille, he said gently, coming to my side, why is your chair not at the table? I swallowed hard. Andrew tried to laugh it off. Well, it's a family-only thing. I mean, Trent turned his head slowly. You speak when spoken to? Andrew stuttered. I was just. Trent walked past him, straight to the head of the table. He pulled out the chair where my father had been sitting and motioned for me to sit. You're done standing for these people. My father raised a hand. Excuse me, this is our home.
No.
This estate now belongs to me. Trent's voice dropped to a calm that could only be earned through years of control. I bought the family debt last year. Every mortgage, every lien, every credit line. You've been living on my balance sheet for 10 months. Silence. My mother's pearl necklace clinked against her glass as her hand trembled again. That's impossible. Trent pulled a folder from his coat and handed it to the lawyer. Verified. All notarized. Your home, your business trust, your retirement estate, it's all under Maddox Holdings now. Then he looked at Andrew. Tell me again, he said, what Camille deserves. Andrew didn't answer. He couldn't. I hadn't known. Trent had always been secretive about the magnitude of his holdings, preferring to live with subtle wealth. We had no mansion, no flashy cars. But he never denied me anything. I never asked for much either. But this was power. And it was mine. Because I was his. The silence in that room was almost holy, not the comforting kind, but the kind you find in ruins after everything has collapsed. I sat down slowly in the chair my husband had pulled out. My hands were cold. Not shaking, just cold, like my blood had shifted direction. Trent stood behind me, resting one hand lightly on my shoulder, calm but commanding. My brother looked like he was about to throw up. I looked at the faces around the table. People who had just hours ago smiled while I was humiliated, discarded like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Not anymore. Trent addressed the lawyer first. As of last quarter, all financial holdings of the Rosalind estate have been consolidated under Maddox Holdings. Would you confirm that for the record, Mr. Tannen? The lawyer, who'd been quiet so far, nodded stiffly. Yes, I have seen the filings. All documentation appears legally binding. You knew, my father snapped. Mr. Tannen didn't even look up. You should have read the fine print when you restructured your debt last year. My mother whispered. This is theft. Trent chuckled. Not kindly. No, Elizabeth. This is business. You sold your legacy to cover Andrew's failed startup and your country club debts. You thought the buyer was a blind trust. My father's jaw clenched. You manipulated us. I protected Camille, Trent said, cool and certain. From the moment I met her, I knew what kind of people you were. You smiled for photos, but counted inheritance before birthdays. You raised her like a placeholder, a backup plan. You used her. He walked around the table, not shouting, not threatening, just stating facts like weapons. She cleaned up Andrew's drunk mistakes. She paid your overdue bills from her college jobs. She handled your mother's nursing arrangements when you couldn't be bothered to leave Aspen. But when it came time to divide the estate, you gave her nothing. Because you thought she was nothing. My mother opened her mouth, but I finally spoke. I made peace with being adopted, I said quietly. But I never thought you'd use it as a reason to erase me. My father looked furious. It's not about erasing. It's about bloodline. This family, I interrupted, my voice steady now, only bleeds when it costs something. There was a long pause. Then Trent dropped the next blow. Now, let's talk about what you owe Camille. My brother blinked. What? Trent dropped another folder on the table. Itemized receipts. Over 9 years. Loans Camille gave you. Payments she covered. Legal fees for Andrew's DUI in Vermont. Tuition assistance for your grandchild. Medical costs your insurance denied because you lied on the forms. Want me to keep going? Andrew's hands clenched into fists. This is extortion. No, Andrew. Extortion is what you did every time you threatened to tell Camille she was adopted unless she bailed you out. Everyone turned to me. I met their gaze. He told me once, when I was 19, said he'd ruin Mom's perfect image if I didn't wire him $6,000 that night. My mother gasped. Andrew. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. You'd think I'd feel powerful in that moment. But honestly, I felt numb. These were the people I grew up trying to please. I brought them report cards, then awards, then paychecks. I smiled at holidays and forgave cold shoulders. I tried so hard to be enough. But none of it mattered. Because I wasn't theirs. And now, they were mine. Effective immediately, Trent continued, this home will be vacated. Camille will decide what to do with it. As the controlling shareholder in Rosalind Trust, she now owns this estate. I turned to him, stunned. What? He smiled gently. I put it in your name last week. My father surged to his feet. You won't get away with this. Trent raised an eyebrow. Get away with what? Buying a failing empire? Saving your daughter from financial abuse? I've got more lawyers than you've got golf trophies, Frank. Sit down. And, for the first time in my life, my father obeyed someone else. He sat down, silently. The guests were clearing out by then, whispering, gathering coats, realizing this wasn't a celebration anymore. This was a reckoning. I stood. I'm not going to humiliate you, I said. I'm not like you. I won't burn your name down in the press or ruin your reputation in court. Andrew exhaled in relief. But, I added, I am going to take back what you took from me. I'm going to renovate this house. I'm going to sell your wine cellar and your antique collection. I'm going to donate every dollar of profit in my name. And, you know what I'll put on the donation receipts? My mother's voice cracked. What? In honor of the family that taught me everything not to become. After everyone left that day, the house felt different. Not just empty. Exposed. Like the walls had finally stopped pretending they weren't hiding something. I walked through each hallway alone while Trent stayed outside on a call. The lights flickered in the west wing. They always had. My room, still untouched, looked like a photo someone had forgotten to take off the wall. A fossil of who I used to be. But when I reached the study, my father's study, something pulled me in. It wasn't just curiosity. It was instinct. A need to know what else they'd buried under years of fake smiles and polished lies. The room was just as I remembered. Cigar scent trapped in leather chairs, heavy books with titles no one ever read. But I didn't stop at the desk. I turned to the tall bookshelf behind it and pressed on the far left edge. Click. The latch gave way. A small compartment opened behind the third shelf. I didn't know why I still remembered that. Maybe because I was the only one who ever noticed it squeaked differently when dusting. Inside were 2 envelopes. One thick, one thin. I opened the thin one first. It was a letter, dated 29 years ago. To whoever finds this. This child deserves more than what we've given her. We made a mistake. But it's too late to go back. Her real mother begged us to tell her the truth. We never did. My throat dried. I opened the second envelope. Inside were official-looking papers, not the kind you see in a regular adoption file. These were sealed court documents. One was a signed non-disclosure agreement between my parents and a private hospital in upstate New York. The name on the file? Vivian Maddox. My hands trembled. Trent's last name. I sat down slowly. My brain didn't catch up until minutes later. Trent. I called, standing quickly. Trent. He came in immediately, eyebrows raised. What happened? I showed him the letter. He read it once. Then again. He didn't say a word for a while. Then he sat down on the edge of the old leather couch. Vivian Maddox was my aunt, he finally said. She disappeared when I was a teenager. Nobody knew what happened to her baby. I thought the child died. My parents didn't talk about it. I stared at him. That baby was me. Trent looked like he'd been punched. I married you, I whispered, voice tight, without either of us knowing we were connected like this. He took a breath. This doesn't change us, but it changes everything else. We didn't sleep that night. We spent hours cross-referencing documents, digging through old files, even calling Trent's family lawyer. By morning, it was confirmed. I wasn't just the adopted child of the Rosalinds. I was the stolen child of a woman they had silenced. Vivian had died shortly after childbirth, according to the hospital's sealed record. But her final request had been for her baby girl to be raised by someone kind, someone safe. Instead, she was handed to the Rosalinds. Trent's jaw tightened. They didn't just betray you. They betrayed my whole family. I looked out the window. I had spent my life trying to earn love from people who never intended to give it. Now, I didn't want their love anymore. I wanted the truth. And I wanted everyone to hear it. 3 days later, I walked into the same mansion I was once kicked out of. Not quietly this time, but with cameras behind me. Trent had arranged a press conference. Not a tabloid circus, a real one. Financial reporters, legal correspondents, even two networks that had previously profiled the Rosalinds during their philanthropy decade. I stood at the front of the massive living room, now stripped of furniture, beside a small podium. Trent stood back, letting me speak first.
He knew I needed to.
The family wasn't invited, but they showed up anyway. My mother walked in first, wearing sunglasses like she thought they'd hide her. My father followed, red-faced already. Andrew? He had the nerve to smirk until he saw the journalists. Then that smirk faded. "Thank you all for coming," I said clearly, voice stronger than I felt. I wasn't going to do this. I thought I could just move on quietly. But silence is how this family survived for so long. I won't be part of that anymore. Reporters leaned forward. Recorders clicked on. I was told at the will reading that I wasn't part of this family, that I was adopted. They didn't say it kindly. They said it like a weapon. Murmurs moved through the crowd. But what they didn't tell you, I continued, was that my biological mother, Vivian Maddox, never agreed to this arrangement. She begged for me to be raised by someone kind. Instead, I was taken,
Hidden.
used as a token child when their biological son messed up. I paused, watching my parents pale. I turned to the cameras. I have court documents proving my adoption was buried under non-disclosure agreements and sealed hospital files. I have a letter from my mother, hidden for decades in this very house, asking for someone to tell me the truth. They never did. My father tried to interrupt. "This is a private matter." "No," I snapped. "It stopped being private when you cut me out of the will and announced to a room full of people that I didn't belong." A female reporter spoke up. "Camille, what do you want now?" I looked right at her. "I want what was taken from me, not money, not property. My name, my truth, my place. And I want everyone to know that being adopted was never the shameful thing. The shame was how they treated me because of it." Another reporter. "And your husband, Mr. Maddox, what role did he play?" Trent stepped forward calmly. "I protected my wife from predators hiding behind champagne and legacy. I didn't come here for revenge. I came to return her power. Every deed, every trust, every shell company, it now belongs to Camille." The Rosalinds were frozen. "And before anyone asks," Trent added, "no, Camille never needed me to save her. But I stood beside her because she's the kind of person who would have walked away from all this if I hadn't insisted she take back what was already hers." I turned one final time to my parents. "You didn't just hide who I was. You buried a woman's dying wish. You told me I wasn't one of you. You were right. I never was. And thank God for that." By the end of the press conference, the Rosalind family's name was trending, not for charity or legacy, but for lies, secrecy, and public betrayal. And me? For once in my life, I didn't feel small walking out of that house. I felt like I finally fit somewhere. In my own name. 3 months later, I stood on a stage in Manhattan, lights bright on my face, a new nameplate behind me. Camille M. Maddox, CEO, Maddox Legacy Initiative. Not Rosalind. Not adopted. Just me in full. The fallout from the press conference had been swift and brutal, but not for me. The Rosalinds were buried under lawsuits. Old debts resurfaced. Donors withdrew. The family's image collapsed, not because I exposed them, but because they couldn't even deny it. Every document we'd presented was real. Every photo, signature, and date, truth. Andrew tried to spin the story. He claimed I plotted everything. But it only took one video of him drunkenly bragging at a club about cutting the orphan out to finish that. The inheritance? I sold half of it. Used it to fund programs for foster youth aging out of the system. For young girls told they didn't belong. For women who gave everything to families that gave them nothing back. My story was no longer a secret. It was fuel. That night after the conference, I walked the old neighborhood. Alone. No cameras. No press. Just me. And I ended up outside the house one more time. They didn't live there anymore. Evicted. quietly. The property was under my name now, but I hadn't touched it. Not yet. A neighbor walked by, recognized me, said, "You handled it with grace." Most wouldn't have. I smiled. Grace is the only thing they never taught me. He nodded. "You're better off." And I believed it. Back home, Trent was waiting on the balcony, wine in hand, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. "How is it?" "Empowering," I said, slipping off my heels.
Exhausting.
"But worth it." He pulled me into a hug. "You did what most people dream of." "No," I murmured into his chest. "I did what most people never think they have permission to do." I stopped chasing approval. Trent kissed the top of my head. "And now?" I looked up at him. "Now," I said, "I build something honest. From scratch. With my name. My rules. My truth." Weeks later, I visited my biological mother's grave. Quiet cemetery. Small headstone. I brought 2 flowers. One for her. One for the version of me that never got to know her. I whispered, "They tried to make me forget you, but I'll make sure no one forgets me." And in that moment, I felt peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I wasn't broken anymore.